Beware of your bus drivers, folks. In my 8th grade year, I moved in with a family member after my mother passed away, and this family member lived pretty far into the country. Because of this, I had to ride the school bus to my new school. I used to live in town before the move, so this was my first time on a bus, besides school field trips. But then there were other adults present. In the morning, there were only about 6 or 7 students on the bus, and I was the first person to be picked up and the last one to be dropped off after school. For the first few weeks of school, everything seemed fine. The students were quiet. Everyone kept to themselves, headphones in and whatnot. Being the first to get on, I always headed straight to the back of the bus to avoid everyone. Not that I had an issue with anyone. I was just socially awkward, and the more people I could avoid talking to, the better. As for my bus driver, we can call him Tom, he seemed like a normal bus driver. He didn't say a word to anyone, and just did his job. He began getting a little friendlier to me when he dropped me off, since I was the last to get off, but it was never anything strange. It was a smile and a "see you in the morning," or "have a nice night." Nothing I would ever suspect. Things continued like this for a while. Nothing exciting happening until me, being a 15-year-old girl who had just lost her mother, decided to throw a giant tantrum and beg that I no longer wanted to live with this family member. I missed the more populated city, my old friends, and my old school. So, about 2 months into going to this school, I decided to move back home with another family member. This is where the story shifts. On the last week of my bus rides, I told Tom I would no longer be taking his bus anymore, as I was homesick and moving back home. He asked me to sit up toward the front of the bus for the rest of that week, so he could say goodbye better. I didn't think anything of it. He was a 40, 50-year-old man who never gave me any red flags. Anyways, I listened and moved to the seat right behind him so he could look at me through the large mirror above him and we could chat. It all seemed innocent at first. He asked about my mother, why I was leaving, what I wanted to do when I grew up, blah blah blah. The last few days of riding the bus, the questions got stranger, and I may have not been able to see the signs of a creep, but I knew the questions weren't things a middle-aged man should be asking a teenage girl. If anything, I thought he was just being nosy. He asked if I had a boyfriend, if I had my first kiss yet, and what an ideal date for me would be. I answered honestly, but with a weird feeling in my stomach. Gut feelings are 500% real. On my final day, riding the bus, as I got on, Tom asked me if I would sit in the front again, but wait until everyone else was off the bus. I agreed, going back to my past seat in the back of the bus, and waited until everyone got off. I moved to the seat behind him again, but this time, he didn't say anything to me. At first, I probably should have mentioned earlier, but from the last stop before me, and my stop, there was about a 25-30 minute driving distance. I'd say he didn't say a word to me for about 20 minutes of that time. I sat listening to my music until he pulled the bus over. We were on my road, and I knew my family member's house was close ahead, yet he pulled over and stopped the bus. If I could explain to you the fear that ignited in me when the bus came to a halt and Tom turned in his chair so he was facing me with a smile on his face, I would. I had seen one too many movies with creepy men doing things they shouldn't be doing to teenage girls and expected the worst. I was expecting to be assaulted, harmed, kidnapped, or maybe even killed, but it never came to that. Instead, Tom told me to take my phone out and add his number to it. He said he would be here if I needed to talk about my mother, telling me the story of his own mother and things I can't really remember. I just remember it being an innocent conversation, if you can even call it that. No matter how weird you might think it is for a bus driver to offer a teenager his number, he dropped me off after that, and we said our goodbyes. Years passed, and I was in 10th grade when I saw Tom again. I still had his number in my contacts, but I never contacted him, even when things got rough, because truly, what girl would call a strange bus driver when she needed help? Not me. I was at Walmart with a few friends, and we decided to split up to get the things we individually needed. I headed off to get a box of Q-tips when I heard someone say my name. I could tell it was a male's voice, and I figured it would just be a male teacher I once had. It was Tom, but I couldn't tell at first. He had grown out his facial hair, and I honestly had just forgotten about him. But once he said hello to me, I remembered everything. I wasn't necessarily scared. I just found it odd that this man who was my bus driver for a few months remembered me after over 2 years. It was a simple conversation. He asked how I had been and how high school was going for me, and I answered, not really bothered to ask how he was. We said our goodbyes, and I met back up with my friends, explaining to them the whole story of Tom, to which they all found it scary that I never told anyone my bus driver gave me his number and asked me strange questions. I explained I thought he was just being friendly, because I truly did. I haven't seen Tom in person since then. Years have gone by. I'm in college, and I thought the story was over then. Just some overly friendly bus driver. It could have stayed innocent, right? About a month ago, I was talking to someone I went to school with at the other school, and I mentioned to her how scared I was thinking about the bus out there because of Tom. She was shocked I had mentioned him and asked for the full story. I told her a summary of it, the questions, the stopping the bus to give me his number, the encounter at Walmart. I told her he just gave me the creeps, and I hoped I would never see him again. This was when I found out Tom had been arrested for sexually assaulting 2 minors. She not only showed me his mugshot, but told me what had happened. My story nearly lined up perfectly with these 2 other children. Bus driver who asked personal questions, offers his phone number and comfort to children with trauma, and acted on it. The only difference was I got out of there. If I hadn't moved back to my hometown, I still wonder what could have happened to me. I'm extremely lucky that I never contacted his number, and feel sorry for the 2 kids that did contact him, feeling they could trust this man. The time a man tried to steal my baby. I've flown with my 1-year-old solo nearly a dozen times. Usually, people are understanding or kind about me having a baby on my lap, and overall, he's a happy, easy baby. He's also very cute, so it's not uncommon for strangers to talk to him. Usually I don't mind. The last trip I took, I sat alone in my aisle with a man sitting by himself directly behind me. My baby was tired and fussing. I knew he was tired, but there's not a lot I could do until after we took off. Right out the gate, the man behind was talking to my baby, saying, "Oh, hi baby, why sad baby, cute, cute baby." I smiled and replied that he was tired. "Sorry for the fuss, thank you." After takeoff, I started to get him settled for a nap. The man behind us continued to talk to my baby, putting his hand through the seats to try and grab his feet. Multiple times I asked him nicely to please stop. My baby was tired, you're distracting him, he just needs a nap. Finally, I set my baby down next to me. He stood on the floor, facing the seat next to me, so that I could make a bottle. The man behind me stood up and reached over my seat to pick him up. I immediately leaned forward to pick up baby, saying, "No thank you, I don't need help. Please no, no thank you." The man pushed me back into my seat while mumbling, "Sweet baby, why baby cry?" I replied very loudly, "No," and quickly picked up my baby. I thought that was the end of that. I was wrong. I tried to rock my baby to sleep, while desperately trying not to lose my cool. As I'm rocking baby, the man behind me reached through our seats to grab my arm, saying, no rocking, you make him cry." I pulled free from him and yelled, "Do not touch me." Again, I thought that'd be the end. I started rocking baby for a second time. This time, the man behind me reached both hands around either side of my seat to hold me in place, saying, no rocking, stop rocking." I am somewhat embarrassed that I completely lost it, clutching my baby to my chest while struggling to get free of him. It hurt. I hit the call light while screaming, "Let me go, do not touch me, let me go, let me go, let me go." He was still holding me by my arms when the flight attendants came running. I could barely get anything out to the flight attendants. Everyone around us was staring. I was sobbing, and all I could get out was that I could not sit there anymore, and for the love of God, please move me. The man behind me tried to move with me, but I told the flight attendants that I did not know him, and he could not come with me. I had a good cry in my new seat, but my baby immediately went to sleep. I was moved to be next to the flight attendants' seats. After calming down, I explained to the flight attendants what had happened. Multiple times, the man that had been behind me got up to try to come back to my new seat, only to be turned around by one of the flight attendants. Towards the end of the flight, one of the flight attendants told me that they had explained everything to the pilot, and the pilot had called the FBI and local police to escort the man off the flight. I would also be escorted off, as well as everyone around us that had watched everything happen. He cheered as he was escorted off. I had to interview with the FBI and nearly missed my next flight. After my trip was done, I had to fly back, going through the same airport. It was stressful and emotional, to say the least, even knowing that he was banned from the airline and the airport. I haven't flown since. To the man that tried to grab my baby from me and then wouldn't let go of me, let's never meet again. I found out my neighbor used to watch me shower when I was a kid. I am 22 years old now. We used to have a neighbor who was around 60, 70 years old. He died a few years ago. When he was still alive, he would cause us so much trouble, scratched our car, poisoned our apple trees and grass, blew up a firework near me to cause me to temporarily go deaf on one ear when I was 4. All kinds of things. His son was a judge in our city, so pretty much everything we took to court was against us. I remember Dad often called us from work to tell us not to be alone at home, and we would have to stay at Grandma's. When I was little, I think around 6 to 7, I would frequently have nightmares about seeing a face outside of the bathroom window. The window is above our bathtub. It's high enough that no one can actually see in unless they climb the roof of our shed, which is underneath the bathroom window in our garden. Coincidentally, the shed is directly next to a fence that separates our garden from the neighbor's one. I still remember the dreams. I remember having them pretty much every other night. I never told my parents when I was little because we never really talked about anything. So I didn't really share anything that was happening to me. Well, I grew up thinking they were just dreams, and that was it. I did mention them to my therapist last year because we were discussing some personal problems, and I felt like this was kind of connected. After coming home, Mom asked me what I talked about with my therapist, so I finally shared I used to have such dreams. I never really thought about them being real, but she told me I actually did tell her I saw our neighbor on our shed's roof. I don't remember telling her that, but she said I did mention it several times, and even my friends told her they saw him there when they came over to our house and it creeped them out. Apparently, I never mentioned him watching me shower, but after she told me that, it really clicked for me, and it was as if I suddenly remembered that, yeah, I do think it was him. It would make sense, and the fact that it happened still creeps me out. There was another incident that creeped me out. It happened when I was around 9 to 10. I went to the balcony in the evening. The balcony door was in my room, and I often went there to call my cat home in the evening. But this time, I saw a person standing in the middle of our garden. It was already dark out, and I couldn't really tell who it was. I waited for a little bit to see what the person does, but I didn't really see him move. It was as if he was just standing and staring in front of him. I called out Dad, because obviously I expected it to be him, even though I found it odd. But the person looked up at me, and even though it was dark, I could tell it was someone else. I think it was partly because my eyes just adjusted to the dark, and I could make out the silhouette of the person better. I went to tell my dad, who was downstairs, but when he looked, there was no one there. When I went back upstairs to my room and went to the balcony again, I noticed my neighbor's back door closing just when I looked there. I don't remember if it was directly the next day or a few days later, but our grass turned brown, and we found out it was poisoned, most of the grass being out of reach from his property.